The Forsaken Princess. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless stars, planets, and civilizations. Among them was the Zephyri Empire, an ancient and powerful race that ruled with wisdom and strength. Their people were known for their beauty, intelligence, and physical perfection. But in their world, weakness was not tolerated. Princess Zyra was born into the royal family, a child of destiny. But when she came into the world, the celebrations turned into whispers, then silence, then disappointment. She was blind. And worse, her legs were crippled. The High Council of Zephyri gathered in the Grand Palace, their glowing robes reflecting the light of the twin moons. They spoke in hushed voices, avoiding the gaze of the Emperor and Empress. "She cannot be the heir," one of the elders said. "A princess who cannot see, who cannot walk. This is an insult to our legacy." The Emperor's face was like stone, unreadable. The Empress, Zyra's mother, held her child tightly. "She is still my daughter," she whispered. "But she is weak," another elder argued. "Our enemies will mock us. The people will lose faith in the throne." Zyra, too young to understand, only felt warmth in her mother's arms. She could not see the disappointment in her father's eyes. She could not hear the decision that would change her life forever. Years passed, but she was never truly alive. Zyra grew up locked away in the palace. She was a princess in name only, hidden from the world like a dark secret. Servants brought her food, but they never spoke to her. The royal teachers ignored her existence. Her own father rarely visited. She learned to move by herself, dragging her lifeless legs across the cold marble floors. She memorized every corner of her golden prison. She listened to the songs of the wind, the distant roars of spacecraft, and the quiet tears of her mother at night. She felt alone, forgotten, worthless, until the day everything changed. The betrayal. On the eve of her 15th cycle, her mother came to her room. But this time, she was not alone. The Emperor stood beside her, his eyes colder than the stars. "My daughter," the Empress whispered, kneeling beside her. Zyra reached for her mother's hands, feeling them tremble. "You are no longer a princess," the Emperor said. His voice was sharp, final. Zyra's breath caught in her throat. She did not understand. How could she not be a princess? She was born into this family. She was Zephyri. But she was also broken. "You will be sent away," the Emperor continued, "to a place where you will not bring shame to our name." Tears welled up in Zyra's blind eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had always known they did not love her, but she never imagined they would abandon her. The guards arrived. She did not fight when they lifted her frail body. She did not scream when they carried her away. She only listened to the sound of her mother's quiet sobs and her father's silence. That was the last time she ever heard them. A fate worse than death. The spacecraft carrying Zyra left the royal planet and traveled far beyond the Empire's borders. She did not know where they were taking her. She did not ask. She only felt the cold metal walls of her prison and the soft hum of the ship's engines. Days passed, then weeks. Finally, the ship stopped. The doors opened, and the guards carried her out. She felt the air change, the temperature dropping sharply. Then, without a word, they left her there. Alone. The ground beneath her hands was rough and lifeless. The wind howled like a beast, carrying the scent of dust and decay. Zyra knew then, this was no planet. This was an asteroid, a barren rock floating in the void. Her father had exiled her to die. She lay there, listening to the emptiness around her. There was no food, no water, no warmth, only silence. Her heartbeat slowed. Maybe this was how it was meant to be. Maybe this was her fate. She closed her sightless eyes, waiting for the end. A light in the darkness. But the universe had other plans. Just as she felt the cold creeping into her bones, a new sound broke through the silence. A deep rhythmic thrum. A vibration in the ground. A voice crackled over an intercom, speaking in a language she did not understand. The air around her shifted as something large hovered above. And then, for the first time in her life, someone touched her, not with cold duty, but with gentleness. A voice, deep and unfamiliar, whispered, "We've got you." The humans had arrived. And with them, so had her second chance at life. The unexpected rescuers. The asteroid drifted silently in the void, forgotten by time. It was a cold, lifeless rock, floating on the edge of Zephyri-controlled space. And yet, in the middle of its desolation, a young girl lay still, abandoned, exiled, left to die. Princess Xyra's breath was shallow, her body motionless. Her blind eyes stared into the nothingness, but her mind remained sharp. The biting cold crept into her bones, draining the last warmth from her fragile frame. She knew she wouldn't last long. Then, the universe shifted. A distant hum cut through the silence. It started as a low vibration in the ground, barely noticeable at first. Then it grew louder, a rhythmic thrum that sent ripples through the air. Xyra didn't recognize the sound, but something deep inside her stirred. A ship. She tilted her head slightly, listening harder. This wasn't the harsh, precise whir of Zephyri engines. It was something different, unfamiliar, alien. A gust of wind kicked up dust and debris as the spacecraft descended. The ground trembled under its weight, and for the first time in days, Xyra felt warmth on her face, a soft heat radiating from the ship's hull. She tried to move, but her body refused to obey. Her strength was almost gone. Then, voices. "We've got movement." The words were in a language she didn't understand, spoken with a firm yet concerned tone. Life signs confirmed, but she's barely hanging on. Footsteps. Metal boots striking against rock. Then, hands. Strong hands, warm and careful, lifted her from the ground. For the first time in her life, someone held her not out of duty or disgust, but with gentleness. She felt herself being carried, the air shifting around her as she was brought inside the vessel. The scent of metal and machinery filled her nostrils, mixed with something unfamiliar, a human scent. The air was thick with something else, too. Something she couldn't quite name. Safety. The first contact. The voices continued around her as the ship's doors sealed shut. Xyra tried to stay awake, but exhaustion pulled at her, dragging her into darkness. She wasn't sure how long she had been unconscious when she woke up to the faint beeping of machines. The air was different, warmer, breathable, carrying a strange but not unpleasant scent. It felt clean. She shifted slightly, her muscles stiff and aching. Soft fabric pressed against her skin instead of the harsh, unforgiving ground. She was lying on something. A bed. A new sound reached her ears, low voices speaking in hushed tones. "She's awake." A shuffling of footsteps. Someone approached. Xyra forced her lips to move. "W." Her voice was weak, barely more than a whisper. A pause. Then a deep, steady voice answered. "You're safe." She felt the presence of someone standing near. The voice was male, older, carrying an air of quiet authority. Not the cold command of Zephyri leaders, but something different, something human. A hand gently touched her wrist, feeling for a pulse. "Can you understand me?" She swallowed, nodding slightly. The man exhaled in relief. "Good." Xyra tried to sit up, but her body protested. She grimaced, feeling the sharp ache in her limbs. "Easy," the man said. "You've been through a lot. Just take it slow." She turned her head toward the voice. "Who are you?" A slight pause. Then, "Captain Ray Carter. Welcome aboard the Eclipse." The name meant nothing to her, but the word captain did. He was a leader, a soldier, perhaps, but he didn't sound like one. Not like the Zephyri warriors who spoke only in orders and threats. She took a slow breath. "Where am I?" "The Eclipse is a human ship," Carter explained. "We picked up a distress signal in this sector and found you on that rock. Can you tell us what happened?" Xyra hesitated, The Zephyri Empire would not want her story to be known. But did it even matter now? She was nothing to them, less than nothing. "I was left there to die," she whispered. A heavy silence filled the room. Carter didn't speak for a moment, but she could feel the shift in the air. Disapproval, maybe even anger. Not at her, but at what had been done to her. "No one deserves that," he finally said, his voice quieter now. Something about his tone made her chest tighten. She had never heard those words before, not from her own kind. She turned her face toward him, even though she could not see. "Why did you save me?" A soft chuckle. "We're humans. It's what we do." A new reality. Over the next few days, Syra began to learn more about her rescuers. The Eclipse was a mid-sized exploration vessel, part of a human coalition sent to chart unclaimed territories and assist any stranded travelers. It had a crew of 20, scientists, engineers, and soldiers, all of them human. She had heard of humans before. The Zephyri Empire spoke of them as a lesser species, primitive, emotional, reckless. But nothing about these people felt lesser. They were strong, but kind, intelligent, but compassionate. And unlike the Zephyri, they did not see her as worthless. Dr. Evelyn Moore, the ship's medical officer, treated her injuries with a patience Tyra had never known. A young engineer named Sam Torres helped her adjust to her surroundings, describing everything in vivid detail so she could see through his words. And Captain Carter, he made sure she never felt like a burden. The hidden truth. One night, as the ship sailed through the stars, Syra sat in the medical bay, lost in thought. Footsteps approached. She recognized the steady rhythm instantly. Couldn't sleep. Carter's voice was calm. She shook her head. "I was thinking about." She hesitated. "My people." Carter leaned against the wall. "You don't have to talk about it if you're not ready." She considered that, but for the first time in her life, someone was actually listening. "They see weakness as failure," she murmured. "A disgrace." Carter sighed. "Sounds like a terrible way to live." "It is." Silence settled between them. Then, quietly, he asked, "What will you do now?" Zara didn't know. She had never been given a choice before. But for the first time in her life, she realized, maybe now she had one. And maybe humanity was about to change her fate forever. The chase begins. The Eclipse glided through the cold abyss of space, its engines humming softly as it cut across the void. Inside, the atmosphere was quiet but tense. Every crew member could feel it, the weight of something unspoken, something just beyond the ship's sensors. Captain Ray Carter stood on the bridge, arms crossed, staring at the holo display in front of him. The asteroid where they had rescued Syra was far behind them now, but something about the whole situation didn't sit right with him. A blind, crippled princess abandoned on a lifeless rock. It didn't feel like an accident. "Captain," a voice pulled him from his thoughts. It was Lieutenant Kara Vaughn, his second in command. Long-range sensors just picked up something unusual. Carter turned, his gut tightening. Define unusual. Kara's fingers danced across the holographic controls, magnifying the data. "It's faint, but I'm detecting the ship signature, matching Zephyri warship design." Carter's jaw clenched. "How far?" "Still distant, but they're on an intercept course. If they maintain speed, they'll reach us in 6 hours." The bridge fell into silence. Carter exhaled slowly. He knew this wasn't a coincidence. They weren't just tracking the Eclipse. They were tracking her. He turned his gaze toward the lower decks, where their unexpected passenger was resting. "Looks like the princess brought company," muttered Sam Torres, the ship's young engineer. Carter didn't respond immediately. Instead, he tapped his earpiece. "Dr. Moore, how's our guest?" A crackle. Then the doctor's voice came through. "Stable. She's still weak, but improving." "Why?" "Because we might have to wake her up." The weight of the past. In the dimly lit med bay, Thyra lay still on the medical cot, listening. She wasn't asleep, hadn't truly rested since she arrived on this human vessel. She had never known peace, only silence. And silence, in her experience, always meant something bad was coming. The sound of approaching footsteps confirmed her suspicions. A door hissed open. Thyra, Carter's steady voice broke the quiet. She turned her head slightly toward him, sensing his presence. "You don't have to say it," she murmured. "They found us, didn't they?" Carter exhaled, surprised at how quickly she understood. "Yeah." She sat up slowly, her hands gripping the sheets. "My father does not make mistakes. If he sent a warship, it means he is making sure I never return." Carter studied her carefully. Even after everything, there was no fear in her expression, only a quiet, grim acceptance. "You don't sound surprised." She gave a small, bitter laugh. "I am not." She turned her blind eyes toward him, as if looking directly into his soul. "You should have left me there." Carter shook his head. "Not happening." "You don't understand," she whispered. "They will not stop until I am dead." Carter crossed his arms. "Then we won't stop either." She frowned. "You are not Sci-Fi. You are not bound by duty or honor. Why are you risking your lives for someone like me?" Carter tilted his head. "Because that's what humans do." Zara had no response to that. The hunt begins. The Eclipse was not a warship. It was an exploration vessel, built for long journeys, research, and survival, not combat. If a Sci-Fi warship wanted to hunt them, they wouldn't last long in a fight. Carter knew their only option was to run. "Give me options," he ordered. Sam leaned over the navigation console, rubbing his temples. "We could try a full-speed burn toward human-controlled space, but we're still days away from the nearest outpost." And? Kara grimaced. "Sir, if we go at full speed, they'll definitely pick up our location." Carter sighed. "So we stay quiet." "Yeah, but that won't work forever," Sam muttered. "They'll keep scanning, and if they catch us out in the open, then we're dead," Carter finished. The bridge fell into a heavy silence. Then Thyra's voice cut through the tension. "I have an idea." The entire crew turned to look at her. Despite her physical weakness, she held herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had never been given a choice, only survival. Sci-Fi warships have powerful scanners, but they also have a weakness, she explained. They rely on long-range pulse scans, which send out energy waves. If we position ourselves near a large enough celestial body, a nebula, an asteroid field, we can distort the signal and disappear. Carter raised an eyebrow. "You're suggesting we hide?" Sarah gave a small nod. "For now. The Sci-Fi do not hunt ghosts. If they lose our trail, they will assume I am already dead and move on." Carter exchanged glances with his crew. It was a risky plan, but it was also their best shot. "Kara," he said, "find us the biggest Dan rock to hide behind." Into the storm. Minutes later, the Eclipse adjusted its course, heading straight toward a massive asteroid belt. Jagged rocks the size of cities floated through space, colliding and breaking apart in an endless, chaotic dance. "This is insane," Sam muttered. "One wrong move and we'll be space dust." "Then don't make a wrong move," Carter said, gripping the console. The ship dove in, weaving between tumbling asteroids. Alarms blared, warning of proximity dangers. The ship's hull groaned as fragments of rock scraped past. "Hold course," Carter ordered. Kara's hands flew over the controls. "Almost there. Just need tow." A sudden shockwave rattled the ship. "They're here," Sam yelled. The Sci-Fi warship emerged from hyperspace, its sleek silver hull gleaming under the distant starlight. It was twice the size of the Eclipse and bristling with weapons. Carter's heart pounded. "Do they see us?" Kiara checked the scanners. "Not yet. Their scans are still sweeping." Zyra tensed. "If they don't find us soon, they'll assume we went into the asteroid belt." And they'll fire blind. Carter clenched his jaw. He had seen the destruction Zafari weapons could cause. One barrage, and the asteroids around them would be turned into dust. And then with it, time was running out. Then suddenly, an idea struck. A crazy idea. "Kiera," Carter said, "how well do you trust our ship's thrusters?" She hesitated. Well enough." Carter smirked. "Then let's make them think we're already dead." He turned to Sam. "Dump a fuel cell. Make it look like an explosion." Sam's eyes widened. "You want to fake our own destruction?" "Exactly." Seconds later, a controlled detonation sent a fireball into space. Debris scattered, mixing with the asteroid field. The Zafari warship halted. Then, after a long, tense moment, it turned and vanished into hyperspace. The crew of the Eclipse exhaled in relief. Zyra sat back, breathing hard. "You're reckless." Carter grinned. "Like I said, we're human." And for the first time, Zyra wasn't sure if that was a weakness or a strength. The evolution of Zyra. The Eclipse drifted in the vast silence of space, hidden deep within the asteroid field. The crew had barely escaped the Zafari warship, and though they were safe for now, everyone knew it was only temporary. The Empire would not give up so easily. Zyra sat alone in the medical bay, her mind racing with thoughts she had never dared to entertain before. She had survived. Again. Not because of fate or the will of her people, but because of these humans. And yet, she remained a burden. She could hear them moving about the ship, adjusting systems, plotting their next move. Every person aboard had a role, a purpose. But what was hers? Her entire life, she had been told she was useless. And now, even among these strangers who had saved her, she was still nothing more than a helpless passenger. Something deep inside her twisted with frustration. "I don't want to be useless. Not anymore." Then the door hissed open. "You're thinking too hard again." Zyra turned toward the familiar voice. Dr. Evelyn Moore. The woman's voice carried the calm confidence of someone who had spent years keeping people alive. "I wasn't thinking," Zyra murmured. Evelyn chuckled. "That's a lie." Zyra sighed. "I hate feeling like this." "Like what?" Zyra hesitated, then clenched her fists. "Weak." The word burned on her tongue. It had followed her since birth, chained to her like a curse. Evelyn sat on the edge of the medical cot. "I don't see weakness. I see someone who survived something that would have killed most people." Zyra exhaled sharply. Surviving is not enough. A moment of silence passed between them. Then Evelyn smiled. "Well, maybe it's time we do something about that." Zyra's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" The doctor leaned forward. "How do you feel about cybernetics?" "A new beginning." Zyra sat in stunned silence as Evelyn explained. "Your body has limitations," the doctor said. "But that doesn't mean you have to be trapped by them." Evelyn gestured to a holo display, showing a model of a cybernetic exoskeleton. "It's experimental," Evelyn admitted. "Human military research, designed for soldiers who suffered extreme injuries. It can restore mobility, enhance reaction time, and make me something I was never meant to be." Interrupted. Evelyn tilted her head. "Make you what you choose to be." For so long, others had dictated her worth. But this was a choice. Her choice. Zyra inhaled sharply. "What's the risk?" Evelyn was honest. "It's not a miracle fix. It will take time for your body to adjust. It might hurt. And if we mess up the neural synchronization, it could cause long-term damage." Zyra absorbed the information. Pain. I've lived with pain. Fear. I was raised in it. But for the first time, I have a chance. She lifted her chin. "Then let's do it." The transformation. The procedure took hours. Zyra lay in the medical bay, her body strapped to a sterile table as advanced surgical drones moved around her. Their mechanical arms worked with inhuman precision, inserting cybernetic interfaces into her nervous system, attaching biomechanical components where her body had failed her. She gritted her teeth against the pain, her fingers digging into the metal beneath her. Carter stood nearby, arms crossed. "You sure about this?" Zaira forced a breath. "Would you rather keep carrying me around like luggage?" Carter smirked. "Fair point." A sharp jolt of electricity surged through her spine, and she gasped. Her vision swam. The machine's weird. Neural sync at 85%. Evelyn's voice came through the speakers. "Increase power." Another shockwave of sensation tore through her body. It was like fire. No, like life itself awakening inside her for the first time. Zaira's fingers twitched. Then her arms moved. Then her legs. And for the first time in her life, she felt them. Her breath hitched. Her head turned toward Evelyn. "I can feel them." Evelyn smiled. "Now, let's see if you can stand." The first steps. The room was silent as Zaira slowly lifted herself off the table. The cybernetic enhancements in her spine and legs hummed softly, responding to every small movement. Her muscles trembled, but they worked. She placed one foot forward, then another. No more crawling. No more helplessness. The crew watched, holding their breath. Even Carter, always steady, looked impressed. Then Zaira straightened, standing tall, her blind eyes facing forward. Carter let out a low whistle. "Well, then." A slow, unfamiliar feeling spread through her chest. Pride. "I never thought I'd see the day," she murmured. Carter smirked. "Technically, you're still not seeing it." Zaira turned her head toward him. "Oh, shut up." The room erupted into laughter, and for the first time in her life, Zaira didn't feel like an outsider. She felt alive. The evolution of sight. The cybernetics allowed her to walk, but she was still blind. That was the next step. "We have something for that too," Evelyn said, showing her a sleek neural visor. It wasn't just a replacement for sight. It was better. It processes spatial awareness, heat signatures, and even motion tracking, Evelyn explained. "It won't give you real sight, but it will let you see in ways no one else can." Zaira hesitated, then reached out. The visor was cool against her fingers. Carter stepped forward. "You don't have to do this." Zaira exhaled, then slipped the visor over her head. A second of silence. Then, the world exploded into color. Not in the way normal eyes would see, but in shapes, movements, patterns. She could sense every presence in the room. The pulse of energy running through the ship, the shifting air around her. She turned her head toward Carter and saw the way his heart beat slightly faster. Surprise. She smiled. "I can see you." He raised an eyebrow. "That's unsettling." She laughed. A real, unforced laugh. For the first time in her life, Zaira was not weak, not broken. She was reborn. And the Zephyri Empire had no idea what was coming for them. The war for freedom. The eclipse drifted in the deep black of space, but inside, everything had changed. Zaira stood at the center of the training bay, adjusting to her new cybernetic enhancements. The visor over her eyes pulsed softly, feeding her information in ways she had never imagined possible. Her legs, once useless, now moved with strength she had never known. She was no longer a crippled princess waiting to be discarded. She was something else now. Something Zephyri would never accept. Something they would fear. And for the first time, she was ready. "The training begins." "All right, princess." Captain Carter leaned against the training room's control panel, arms crossed. "Your fancy new legs work. Now let's see if you can fight." Zaira turned toward him, tilting her head. "You doubt me?" "Not at all," Carter smirked. "I just like watching rookies fall on their asses." Zaira smirked back, then prepared to be disappointed. Carter nodded toward Kira Vaughn, his second in command. "Kira, put her through the basics." The tall, battle-hardened woman stepped forward, rolling her shoulders. You ever fought before? Zyra's fingers flexed. No. Zephyri tradition dictates that I should have been killed at birth. A warrior's training was never meant for me. Kira raised an eyebrow. Then it's time to rewrite tradition. She lunged. Zyra barely had time to react, but her cybernetics did. The visor picked up the incoming attack, tracking the heat signature, the velocity, the angle. Her body moved before she even had time to think. She dodged. Kira's fist barely missed her, and Sarah countered, her own strike clumsy, but fast. Faster than a normal human. Kira twisted, blocking the strike with a grin. Damn, you're quick. Zyra smiled. Surprised. Not yet, Kira said. Then she struck again. The next few minutes were a blur of movement. Zyra's body reacted faster than her mind could process. Her training had just begun, but already she was learning. When Kira finally stepped back, she was breathing heavily, sweat on her brow. All right, she said. I take it back. You're not a rookie. Carter clapped his hands. Good, because you're going to need all of that real soon. Kira straightened. Why? Carter's expression darkened. Because we're going to war. The Zephyri's next move. The crew gathered in the war room, a holographic display of the Zephyri fleet flickering before them. The Empire hadn't given up. We intercepted a transmission, Kira explained. The Zephyri aren't just hunting us. They're planning something bigger. Sam Torres, the ship's engineer, tapped a few keys, and the holo display changed, revealing a massive war fleet. Carter's voice was grim. They're launching an attack on a human colony. Zyra's stomach twisted. Why? To send a message, Kira said. They think we helped you escape, which means humanity is now a threat. Zyra clenched her fists. I will not let them kill innocents because of me. Carter gave her a long look. Then I hope you're ready to fight for something bigger than yourself. Zyra nodded. I am. She had spent her life in darkness. Now she would fight for the light. The battle plan. The crew worked through the night, preparing for what was coming. The plan was risky, a direct assault against a Zephyri fleet. We can't outgun them, Carter admitted. But we don't have to. We just need to buy time for reinforcements. Kira pointed to the display. The colony has planetary defenses, but they won't hold against a full fleet. We need to hit them hard and fast. Zyra studied the plan. What's my role? Carter smirked. You're the wild card. Zyra raised an eyebrow. We're going to use you as a distraction, Kira explained. The Zephyri think you're weak. Let's show them how wrong they are. A slow smile spread across Zyra's lips. I like the way you think. The battle begins. The Eclipse dropped out of hyperspace just outside the colony's orbit. The Zephyri fleet was already there, dozens of warships, their weapons primed. The alarm blared. They've spotted us. Carter's voice was firm. All hands, battle stations. The ship shuddered as the Zephyri opened fire. Energy blasts streaked past, lighting up the darkness of space. Shields at 70%. Sam called out. Hold course, Carter ordered. Zyra, you're up. Zyra stood in the launch bay, clad in a reinforced combat suit. Her cybernetics hummed with energy, her visor glowing faintly. She stepped onto the drop pod platform. You sure about this? Kira asked. Zyra smirked. No. Then she launched. The pod shot out into space, hurtling toward the enemy fleet. If the Zephyri thought she was weak, she was about to prove them wrong. A princess no more. The drop pod slammed into the Zephyri flagship, breaking through its hull. Smoke and fire erupted around her as she stepped out, her enhanced body adjusting to the artificial gravity. Zephyri soldiers turned, weapons raised. Impossible, one of them whispered. She's supposed to be dead. Zyra tilted her head, disappointed. Then she moved. Faster than their eyes could track, She was among them. Her cybernetic limbs struck with inhuman speed. Her visor mapped every movement, every attack. She dodged, countered, struck. One Zephyri went down, then another, then another. She was no longer a helpless princess. She was a warrior. The alarm blared as the ship's commander finally appeared, a high-ranking Zephyri general. His eyes widened in shock. "You." Hera didn't give him time to finish. She lunged. The battle had only just begun. And this time, she wasn't fighting to survive. She was fighting to win. The Reckoning. The Zephyri flagship trembled under the weight of battle. Sirens blared through its corridors, echoing the screams of soldiers as Syra tore through them like a ghost of vengeance. She had once been abandoned, cast away as weak, unworthy. Now, she was a storm. Her cybernetic limbs moved with terrifying precision, each step calculated, each attack precise. The enhanced neural visor over her eyes painted the world in data, tracking heat signatures, movement, even the subtle shifts of muscle tension in her enemies before they struck. She saw everything. She felt nothing. Zephyri warriors lunged at her, their plasma blades slicing through the air. Zyra sidestepped effortlessly, her body reacting before her mind could even process the attack. She drove her enhanced fist into the nearest soldier's chest, sending him flying into the metallic walls. Another came from behind. She sensed him. She ducked low, sweeping his legs out from under him before slamming her boot against his throat. More. There were always more. Zyra had never been taught to fight, but she was built to survive. And now she was built to win. The face of the enemy. Beyond the chaos, at the end of the corridor, a door hissed open. A single figure stepped out. General Kelvek, Zephyri High Commander, loyal to the Emperor. The man who had personally signed Syra's exile order. He was tall, armored in ceremonial battle gear, his deep violet skin marked with golden tattoos, symbols of Zephyri elite warriors. For a moment, he simply stared at her. The little crippled princess. The abandoned mistake. And yet, here she stood, alive and powerful. "You should not exist," Kelvek murmured, his voice filled with something unreadable. Disgust. Fear. Syra tilted her head. "And yet, here I am." His expression hardened. "I do not know how the humans corrupted you, but your defiance ends here." He drew his energy blade, the edges humming with raw plasma energy. "You are not Zephyri anymore. You are an abomination." Zyra smirked. "I never was Zephyri, was I?" Then she attacked. The duel. Kelvek was fast, but so was she. Their blades clashed in a blur of motion. Syra dodged his first strike, countered, then ducked as his blade slashed just inches from her throat. Sparks flew as their weapons met, lighting up the dark corridor. Kelvek was a master swordsman. His movements were disciplined, controlled, each attack precise. But Syra was something different. She did not fight with tradition. She did not fight with honor. She fought to win. She kicked off the wall, flipping over him, slamming her cybernetic knee into his ribs. He staggered, surprised by her speed. "You fight like a human," he spat, wiping blood from his lip. Zyra smiled. "Good." She lunged. This time, she did not hold back. Her attacks were relentless. Fast, unpredictable. Her enhanced strength shattered his defenses. His blade trembled. He was losing. Then, suddenly, he changed tactics. Kelvek's hand shot forward, gripping the hilt of a hidden plasma dagger. He stabbed her. The blade plunged deep into her side. Pain exploded through her body. Her vision flickered. The wound was bad. For a moment, everything slowed. Kelvek leaned close, whispering, "Weakness still lingers in your blood, princess." Zyra gritted her teeth. "No, not again. Not this time." With a burst of cybernetic power, she grabbed his wrist and crushed it. Kelvek screamed as the bones shattered under her grip. His dagger fell to the floor with a clatter. Then Syra drove her knee into his chest, lifted him off the ground, and hurled him across the corridor. He crashed into the wall, coughing up blood. His blade lay far from his grasp. She stood over him now. The crippled princess had brought a Zafari warlord to his knees. "You should have killed me when you had the chance," she murmured. Kelvek's eyes burned with fury. "The Emperor will." Syra cut him off with a sharp kick to his head. He slumped to the ground, unconscious. She staggered back, clutching her wounded side. Blood dripped between her fingers. Then, through her visor, she saw new heat signatures approaching. More Zafari warriors. And outside, beyond the flagship's windows, the real battle had just begun. The Eclipse versus the Empire. The Eclipse spun through the battlefield, dodging energy blasts as Zafari warships rained fire upon them. The human colony below was under siege, its defense turrets barely holding back the onslaught. On the bridge, Captain Carter's jaw was tight. "We can't hold much longer." "Shields at 20%. Sam shouted. "One more direct hit, and we're fried." Kira clenched her fists. "We need Syra back now." As if on cue, Tyra's voice crackled over the comms. "Carter." He exhaled in relief. "Dan, you're still alive. Not for long if you don't get me off this ship. Tell me you at least got something useful." A small pause. Then, "I have their war codes." The bridge fell silent. Carter's eyes widened. "What?" Tyra smirked despite the pain. Kelvek was an arrogant bastard. He kept encrypted fleet command data on him. "I have access to their formation patterns, attack plans, and override codes." Kira grinned. "We can turn their own fleet against them." Carter cracked his knuckles. "All right, Princess. Let's get you out of there." The escape. Tyra raced through the flagship, dodging gunfire, her body fueled by sheer adrenaline. In the hangar, a small human assault craft was waiting, sent by the Eclipse. She sprinted toward it, her cybernetics burning with power. Zafari guards blocked her path. She tore through them. A final sprint. A final jump. She landed in the cockpit, slamming the controls forward. The craft blasted out of the hangar just as the flagship's alarms reached a deafening pitch. Inside, Kelvek awoke just in time to hear a voice over the ship's speakers. "Zafari Fleet Command Override activated." The flagship's own weapons turned on its allies. The Zafari fleet erupted into chaos. Xera smirked as she soared through the battlefield, heading back home. The Zafari had made one mistake. They had let her live. And now she was coming for the throne. The new dawn. The Eclipse soared through the wreckage of what had once been the mighty Zafari war fleet. Twisted metal, shattered ships, and the lifeless remains of once unstoppable warriors floated in the black void, consumed by fire and silence. Humanity had done the impossible. They had not only survived, they had won. And at the heart of it all, standing in the bridge of the ship that had become her home, was Syra. Not a princess, not an exile. Something new, something more. Her cybernetic limbs hummed with energy, her enhanced visor feeding her constant streams of battlefield data. Even though the fighting had stopped, her pulse remained steady, her mind calculating, always scanning. For the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid. And now, it was time to finish this. The Emperor's last move. Carter stood beside her, arms crossed, watching the wreckage on the holoscreen. "Feels good, doesn't it?" he muttered. Syra tilted her head slightly. "Victory." Carter smirked. "Yeah. Kinda makes all the near-death experiences worth it." Syra remained silent for a moment, then turned toward the crew gathered around the bridge. "The war isn't over," she said. The room fell quiet. Kira frowned. "Xera, we just crippled the Zafari fleet. Their command structure is in chaos. What else is left?" Xera's fingers curled into a fist. "The Emperor still stands." A heavy pause. Sam Torres, leaning against the navigation console, let out a low whistle. You're talking about taking the fight to the Zephyri homeworld. Syra nodded. I have to. Carter exhaled slowly. That's a hell of a risk, Princess. She turned to him. Don't call me that. Carter smirked. All right. Then what do I call you? She hesitated. I don't know. Because that was the truth. She had been a princess, an exile, a survivor. But what was she now? A warrior? A leader? Something in between. She had no answer. But she knew what had to be done. I started this fight when I was born, Syra murmured. I intend to finish it. Carter studied her for a long moment. Then he cracked his knuckles. All right then. Let's go overthrow an emperor. The final strike. The Zephyri homeworld. A planet of towering cities, floating spires, and glowing crystalline structures, stood at the heart of the empire. For centuries, it had been untouched by war. Now that was about to change. The eclipse dropped out of hyperspace, joined by a coalition of human warships, a fleet assembled from every colony, every station, every force willing to stand against tyranny. The Zephyri defenses activated instantly. Massive planetary cannons lit up, targeting the incoming fleet. Syra stood in the command bay, staring at the world she had once called home. A place that had never accepted her, a place that had cast her aside. Now, it would remember her name. Status? Carter called out. Kiera's fingers flew over the controls. Their planetary shields are active. We can't break through unless we disable the generators. Syra's cybernetic enhanced mind processed the situation in seconds. Then we go inside. Kiera raised an eyebrow. You mean land on the planet? You do realize this place is crawling with people who want you dead, right? Syra's lips curled into a smirk. Let them try. Carter sighed, shaking his head. I should have seen this coming. He turned to the crew. All right, people. We're making one last trip into enemy territory. Infiltration. The dropship cut through the Zephyri atmosphere, weaving through towering spires and dodging patrol ships. Syra stood at the front, gripping the rails as the city of her birth came into view. For the first time, she saw it through her visor. It was beautiful. Massive bridges of glowing stone connected grand towers that floated on anti-gravity platforms. Silver rivers of light flowed through the city, guiding hovercrafts in smooth streams of motion. And at the center of it all, the imperial palace, her father's throne. The home she had never been allowed to belong to. Her final battlefield. The ship landed hard, blasting dust and debris as the doors hissed open. Zephyri guards turned, weapons raised. Then Syra stepped forward. And for the first time in her life, they hesitated. She wasn't the helpless girl they had thrown away. She was something else now. Something they could never understand. She moved. Before they could react, she was among them, faster than they could follow. A guard raised his rifle. She grabbed his wrist, twisted, sent him flying into his comrades. Another lunge. She ducked, swept his legs out, and slammed him into the ground. Move, Carter shouted, charging past as the rest of the crew followed. The path to the throne room was clear. Now, only one man stood in her way. The final confrontation. The Emperor of the Zephyri sat upon his grand throne, his face carved from stone and silence. His guards lined the walls, unmoving, weapons lowered. He did not rise. He did not speak. He simply watched as his daughter entered the throne room. Syra stepped forward, blood-stained but unbroken. Her visor gleamed with golden light, reflecting the man who had cast her away. You should not have come back, the Emperor finally said. Syra's fingers flexed. You should have killed me when you had the chance. A pause. Then a sigh. You are not Zephyri, he said. Not anymore. Syra tilted her head. I know. She stepped closer. But neither are you. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. You rule with fear, she continued. With power. With tradition. And now, look around you. Your people are afraid. She gestured to the silent guards. They don't know what to do, because for the first time, they see that the Empire is not invincible. The Emperor rose slowly. Do you think this will change anything? Zara stared at him. It already has. A long silence. Then, the Emperor kneeled. His guards followed. Zara's heart pounded. It was over. She had won. Not with war, not with violence, but by proving something more powerful. That weakness is only real if you believe it is. That change is inevitable. That a new dawn had begun. She turned to Carter and the crew, exhaling a shaky breath. What now? Kira asked. Zara lifted her chin. Now, she whispered, we build something better.